Hey, everybody. Welcome to STL Comics Toys and More. We are doing our first podcast here in the shop, trying to see what we can do exactly. And we promise you not to make that title so long. We think it's going to be something along the lines of All the Smoke with STL Comics or just BS talk. I don't know. We'll figure that out. By the time this video gets edited, we'll exactly know where we're going with that. So we're going to be very candid this first go around and, throughout about just how we are in general. You guys see that in the shop, the guys that know us, the people that know us, that come in here regularly. They see, we are not a pull punches type of crew. We talk openly and honestly. We can be nice, we can be polite and all that stuff, but there we go, a little flip. But we're going to be candid, and with that, we're going to talk about the candid side of what we're doing. We're really shooting at the hip tonight. It's taken us a little bit longer than we hoped to iron out all the technical portions of this and get this up and going. So we may not necessarily be as well prepared as we would have hoped, right, James? I mean, James, maybe. James. I told James a few weeks ago when we set out to start doing this, I said, be prepared. We're not going to, half-ass this. I want you to have notes. I want you to be prepared. And you see the guy has the laptop here is James, and I'm here empty-handed with a drink and some water because all my notes are up here, and that's where I'm at today. So we're just going to, see where we end up.
I would do that if I could remember my notes.
Well, yeah. Well, sometimes my notes trip over each other, so
that too.
And we're going to hope to avoid that this evening as we get into discussions. So another thing, as we dive into various episodes in this venture, there's going to be a lot that we discuss that some of you have, been shopping with us, following with us, connected to us in some way for many years, several years, a few years. You're going to hear some things you've probably heard before, especially if you've been following us on the socials. We're going to try to keep those points short and sweet and not really dwell on them and drag it out to lose your interest. But at the same point, we think some of that will have to be discussed. So let's dive right on in. Where do we start? Let's start with how do we end up right here today, maybe?
Well, I mean, somebody once upon a time said, open a comic store. It'll be fun.
It'll be fun, they said. That's my Die Hard reference, come out to the coast, type of thing. Yeah. I went many years selling as a online and convention, local show, traveling shows, all that stuff. Dealer. Did that for, at this point, I guess 16 years before finally opening the shop. November will mark us 6 years, 4 years in this location, 2 years in the previous. And, yeah, I didn't think I would end up here, to be honest with you. I enjoyed my freedom that I had with shows. Now, at the same time, with that being said, there was a lot of freedom that came to it. I didn't have to be here 5-6 days a week. We didn't have to have those 10 to 7, 10 to 5 hours, whatever days they were.
But you did have to have another job.
Well, I went 2 years without another job and just did shows and online. Even had somebody working for me in my basement. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it wasn't a pleasurable experience, but he got a paycheck and he did what he had to. He would travel with me to shows at times too. So, it was for a long time. It was a full-time job and then a full-time side hustle. And I was doing shows and I was trying to push my eBay. And then in 2012, you started our Facebook page right about the time that, all the vlogs and blogs and what do you call those boards?
Message boards.
Message boards. They all kind of started to fall by the wayside.
Well, and that's what happened to the original STL Comics website. Is the traffic just went from being really busy to almost stark dead, and it's because everybody went to Facebook.
Everybody went to Facebook, and Facebook was kind of a different monster than MySpace when it came into those type of things. MySpace didn't really impact, those type of sites or forums or anything. But then Facebook came along, and it all changed. Mm-hmm. And it didn't happen overnight. I joined Facebook in 2008. It took till 2012 before you created the page, and we started to roll with that.
Right.
And even at that time, the business was very different. So there were years where I talked about buying existing shops that were already established and running.
Looked at more than a few of them.
Yeah, for sure. And then, years later, before we opened this one, I looked at them again. I looked at several and looked at some books, and some people wouldn't show me their books. They would just tell me what they wanted, and kind of left a bad taste in my mouth as far as that goes. But then the flip to it was, well, do I really want to pay for what somebody else built and established, or do I just want to strike out on my own? So I started looking at that and decided, let's be honest, at that time, I wasn't going to take the gamble.
Well, a lot of those shops also were new comic shops that were making their living off of every Wednesday's delivery. They were doing a very different thing than what happens here.
Absolutely.
So to take that over would have led you down that path, which never would have ended up to be this.
Yeah, that was those formats were all completely different. It was your weekly customers, your pull and holds, your subscribers, which we don't have, and I had absolutely zero experience in, other than being a guy that got books pulled for me every week.
Right.
Wasn't into that, I guess, network of business side of it. And so I reluctantly pulled back and shut down, all communications with these people, and decided I wasn't going to further invest any time or pursuant into their business. And it just kind of went away. And then even, I want to say maybe 2016, 2017. So backing up, sorry, probably going to be some of that throughout the night. But backing up, I started doing this in 2002. Doing this, like we were talking about, that iteration, dealing at conventions.
Well, you didn't even hit eBay right away. You were doing shows until I leaned on you to.
Yep. I was essentially doing one show and a flea market. And I met you at that first show I ever did, and you
was Shrewsbury.
Yeah. It was the first show for Shrewsbury in the for the old Copling House show to move to Shrewsbury here in St. Louis County. That was the first show they did in that location, was the very first show I set up at.
It's funny to call it the new location 23 years ago, and it's still there.
It's still there, and still no more parking, unfortunately. But, I love the show for what it is. It's great. It's got new owners. Hopefully maybe at some point we'll have them guys in here or not owners, new organizers behind that show. I think we can get those two.
Ultimately, we have very little to complain about with that show, because you and I both, together and separately, have done very well at that show over the years.
At one time, there was me, you, and another guy taking over a dozen tables in that show. At one time, backing up again, there was a time I was doing 7 to 9 tables by myself at that show.
Which is insanity.
Yeah. If you remember the, mid-2000s maybe, I was packing it in there. I had a whole crew driving stuff in, and we made it work. Where were we going with this? So backing up the show thing. So, no problems with Shrewsbury show. We appreciate it. We're glad to see they're still going. Anyway, it was, in 2015, I took a step back from being a convention dealer, maybe 2016. No, I'm sorry, 2013. We're going to edit that out. So 2013, 2014, I took a step back because my professional career, my big boy job. By the way, side note, I'd like to point out that we both have big boy shirts on with collars and some buttons on them this evening, looking clean and fresh. My big boy job, kind of dictated my schedule, and I really couldn't focus on it, and I stepped away for a while. I even sold off my inventory. And then 2016, my now wife, the girlfriend at the time, kind of encouraged me when I said, I have an opportunity to buy some product and to start selling comics and toys again. And she said, well, if you really think that's worth it, let's try it. So I went and bought a van load of stuff, and a couple weeks later we did a Toyman show. It was her first time ever going. It was my first time back in about 2 or 3 years after over a decade of doing that show consistently. And at the end of the day, she just looked at me and said, yeah, let's do this. And I said, all right, yeah, let's do it. And she was like, no, for real. I didn't know you were this serious when you talked about this. And
it's simple math. She saw the cash in the bank book at the end of the day.
We were loading out way less than what we took into the show, and we were leaving with a lot more money than I invested in that collection. Not that anybody was shorted when I bought the collection, just the work went into it, and we made that money.
Well, I'd be surprised if you didn't spend some of that money that day buying more while you were there, too.
Maybe. At that time, might have been a little reserved thinking about that. Like, I don't know. Do I want to get back into that? Like buying out a show at times and stuff? So, not sure that really happened. But then we did a couple more shows. We started doing Shrewsbury. Then we started doing, I'm sure you'll remember, you came and set up at some of the garage sale comic shows.
Sure. In Fenton.
Yeah, in Fenton, my old house. We'd fill up the garage and the whole driveway and sell comics and toys and be set up. And then we kept doing shows. And then, again, my wife comes back into this equation when I start complaining about some of the venues we were setting up at and the shows we were doing. And she said, well, why don't you do something that you want to do that could be better? I think the first show was 2017. We did the Bottleworks show, was the very first one.
Was that the first one?
That was the first one. So we did that, but I also had the one-day show scheduled. So the first MicroCon that we did at the Bottleworks was exactly 2 weeks before my first one-day show here in St. Louis.
Wow.
So we were really packing it hard. Like, I was like, let's see what we can do in this town. And then that led to me doing it in other towns and like college towns is really what I would consider some of the cities that I went to and we started doing. And then, let's say, 2018 rolled around, and a new antique mall was opening up in St. Anne, Missouri, the Manhattan Antique Mall. Still exists. It's a different name. It's the St. Louis Antique Mall, and I believe they also own the West County Antique Mall, and the new owner, Chad, seems to be doing some great stuff with that place. Really seems to have a hype around it.
I haven't been to the West County location.
I haven't been there since he's taken it over, but I think it might be worth a trip. But prior to him being involved, there were different owners. They were opening up this new location, and Chris from Toyman, Chris McQuillan, we were talking about Toyman earlier. he passed my information on and said, I think this guy probably has some inventory and might be interested in opening a booth. So a booth. That's what we did at first, a booth. So I go out and I meet with the management, I guess, and we talk about it. And I open a booth. On their grand opening weekend, I cannot explain how much our expectations were blown away sales-wise. Like, we used our social media following to really generate good business, and it was phenomenal. So we went 3 months, 4 or 5 months maybe at the most, and I said I wanted to open a second booth. So we opened a second booth. All this being said, at the same time, there was an event space that the Antique Mall had, and
gosh,
you remember that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It seems like a lifetime ago now,
right?
But, right?
But really, it's not that long ago.
Right. So they had an event space, and I was like, I also run comic shows. Do you guys, would you guys be up for me hosting these here? And they said, yeah. So we did it. We moved the microcons there, and we, had food trucks and, great crowds and all this stuff. It was great. And time continued to go by, and I was seeing what our two booths were doing based on our productivity and what we were putting into them. And I went to them and I said, I want more space. Well, how much more space do you want? How much do you got? That was kind of my response. But I think I want maybe another 4 10x10 booths, maybe 6. I don't know. So then they came back to me and they said, we have this event space that you use, and you are honestly the only promoter that fills the space and makes the best use of it. So what if we just carved out 1,700 square feet in the back corner of this event space and built you a store inside of our Antique Mall? 4 walls, a door, you can set your own hours inside of our hours and all that. And I kicked it around. I mean, I even went and looked at retail spaces. And we'll circle back, but one of the spaces I actually looked at was this space. I always eat at the bar across the parking lot here. We're very big fans of theirs. And I looked at this space. It was a Curves at one point, and then the Curves moved next door, and it left this space open. So I looked at it. I looked at other multiple spaces, but to be honest, numbers lie, people don't. I always say that. What they presented me to rent that space was a win-win for me. So we took that space on, and then 2020 hit. And April came, and COVID came. So we opened in November of 2019, and 5-6 months in, everything was turned upside down. It was a hard go. And then it got, long story, like even in the Antique Mall, we had to move our store and build a new one inside of the store. Crazy story. Like, weed grower involved, everything was going recreational and stuff here in Missouri. And somebody was just willing to pay more money for that retail space than the owner could make off of us. So that space got shut down, and then eventually we moved over, and then 9 months later we had to start over again because the same grower wanted more space, and the same landlord said, we can make more money with you than we do at the Antique Mall. And there were 3 months just totally up in the air of like, what are we doing? Like, where am I going to be forced out of here? Am I going to come in one day and the doors are going to be like, it was just very uncertain. Then finally they let us know, we're shutting the Antique Mall down and you have to figure it out. So that left me in a very, large amount of turmoil. And I started scrambling. We found this place, and here we are. Now I'm going real fast for you. So we moved in here. And then we moved in here. And even since we've been here, I've increased our space a third, and the amount that we've grown and the things that we've done. Essentially, I don't have any regrets on when or where I opened the shop. It all worked out for the best.
Right.
And at the best timing that it could have.
Despite COVID.
Despite inflation, despite all kinds of stuff. I mean, we went 2 years. I couldn't hardly get bags and boards, and
Right.
we made our way through that, and we ended up here. And here we are today. Cheers. So, I'm going to take the focus off myself and put it on my hype man right now.
Ruh-roh.
James in the house.
Ask me something.
Let's get a little personal. I think, some people might want to know some history with us. What got you into comic books? When did you pick up your first book?
I can't remember the first one.
Oh.
It's a lifetime adventure, right?
Sure.
I don't remember a time of not loving them, and in conjunction, the toys that went with them, the TV shows that went with them. The 80s was a really great time of selling stuff to kids that my parents could not afford. All your toy manufacturers figured out that they could make a 23-minute commercial with a cartoon and get you to buy everything that you need, your little heart desires. Well, yeah, I didn't get everything my heart desired, and
me either.
I was the kid that would read the whole comic, not just the parts. Like, I read the ads. I was a knucklehead, and every little note that the editors put in there that said, see this issue, I wanted to go see that issue. So that was my nature, to become a hoarder straight out of the gate. Because I wanted all the issues so that I could go read all the things.
All the connecting stories.
Yes, I wanted to read everything they told me to read.
Yeah.
And that takes you back into comic history real fast.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were talking about 1980s, really Marvel Comics, which I was most into. Those storylines were only going back a little over 20 years. And, here we are 40-something years later. Lord have mercy on anybody that starts now.
Well, and all of the restarts you're going to have to partake in.
Right.
I mean, that's a different story.
But I read everything I could get my hands on.
All right, so you can't remember the first book.
Can't remember the first book.
What was the first title that seemed to grab your attention?
There was two at the same time.
All right.
Uncanny X-Men,
of course,
which was Claremont.
Yep.
And any book that I could get my hands on. So there was a number of different artists, and then Wolfman Perez, New Teen Titans.
Okay. Yeah. Which, of course, I know, but I wanted to ask for you guys.
Right.
So
well, he's never heard the end of that from me.
No. Yeah, and I mean, I would assume. How'd you spread out your budget in the 80s with Claremont and the X-Men titles and all the spin-offs? I mean, were you one of those kids? Did you have to get everything that he was doing?
Everything I could afford.
Sure.
But at the time, we really didn't have comic book stores where I lived at in Illinois. We had bookstores with a spinner rack, or a grocery store with a single rack with a few books on it. So budget didn't affect it as much as maybe what was available when I went there. You spin the rack, you see that cover catches your eye.
I'm taking it home.
Yeah.
What I can get right now it's in my hands.
So I had lots of broken storylines that I didn't go back and finish and match up until years later.
See, now you sound like my dad and my uncle. They were like, I couldn't find it everywhere. I couldn't find it. But that just goes to show at certain times and areas, you couldn't find it where you were at.
Well, I mean, small towns all over the country is probably the exact same story.
Yeah.
You know, the direct market was still finding its footing. Comic book stores were really just starting to open in the early and middle 1980s.
Yeah.
The newsstands were still the driving force, I think, largely in comic book sales. The only other avenue I had was the multi-packs, the bagged stuff.
Oh.
So I
Like
had
the Whitman packs,
I had
the
a
3-packs.
I had a lot of Whitmans.
Yeah, yeah.
And most of them I didn't buy at the time they came out. I was finding them at like discount blowout stores.
Oh, dude, like half my young childhood collection probably came from Woolworths and Globe Drug with those 3-packs, like, because they would just have bins of them. Just thrown out, and you could just, oh, this one looks cool, this one looks cool. I get 3 comics for the price of one. Yeah, I'm doing it.
In 1983, I was reading 1978.
Yes, exactly. I was still reading Gold Key and stuff in the 80s. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we then, all right, clip. So with that, then, you know, that's how you found them as a child. Did you stay with comics consistently throughout your life?
There was a period of high school where I found other adventures.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Ladies.
And
sports.
But to go along
music.
with that, right around the early middle part of high school for me is when Marvel imploded. Image started.
That's when I stopped reading.
And I just didn't care anymore.
Yeah, that's all the hyper testosterone masculinity stuff that came out at that time.
It didn't appeal to me.
I didn't appreciate it. The writing lacked so much. We haven't even talked about how I got into comics, but it lacked, and compared to what I was used to, and
it just wasn't good anymore.
And the art was just so obliviously or obviously overblown. You know, it was ridiculous,
and with almost no story to go with it. In a lot of
no
cases.
story. I mean, I will say that Image taught us one thing. Even some of the most talented artists of that time
still need a writer.
Couldn't write.
And they sure as hell needed more editors.
And, you know, sometimes that might relate back to more of the Silver Age as well. Sometimes I think there's a lot of misconstruities, if that's an actual word. When
you might have made that one up.
I might have. Look at me making words up. That might be, you know, something that has definitely cycled through the industry over the years. Just, you know, you might have a great artist that has an idea, but without a writer or even sometimes an editor just to come in and shove the idea down your throat, you know, I think all parts kind of have to work together in that industry.
Well, I found my way back around 96, give or take the time of Marvel's bankruptcy.
Well, which one?
The big one.
The big one. The big one.
And honestly, what brought me back, even though it maybe wasn't the best stuff still, was the Heroes Reborn, because they got some of those Image guys to come back.
Well, they got Jim Lee and Liefeld.
And
paid them ridiculous amounts of money to come back.
Well, but also had other people writing the stuff they were doing.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't the best stuff, but it did bring me back, and I consistently, from that point on, bought new comics off the shelf until 2008. And after, a handful of years after 96, I realized I needed to find a better discount on those books. So I went to make friends with people that had shops and work out a deal or two to help their business in ways in order to earn a better discount and make it so I could afford to spend the same money and get more books.
Well, there was a time you were even reviewing books, right, online?
Yeah, and that came a little later after the initial success of the old STL Comics website. I joined up with another site and was writing for them along with publishing things to the STL Comics website, and did get a lot of stuff for free. Never one book from Marvel or DC or hell, even Image for that matter.
Oh.
I had a lot of indie stuff, but at the same time, I was introduced to a lot of things I probably wouldn't have purchased necessarily or even found my way into without these guys saying, hey, you should check this out. You should review this. I found so many good things. It really opened my mind. And it was around that same time I really started reading a lot more indie stuff and books like Fables and Why the Last Man.
Oh, we're going to circle back to that here.
It's well, and it, I had been a superhero guy.
Yeah.
And it, really came to realize that there was a lot more out there, and just because they didn't wear spandex in bright colors,
Well, the medium can definitely deliver on a lot more than what people think it can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to now tell my little story that matches what I asked all of you. And as I said, circle back to some things that came. So I was born in 79. In 82, my uncle was my babysitter, essentially. And my earliest memories of almost anything, not just comic books, but almost anything, is sitting on his lap in my parents' living room in a chair and him reading me things like Giant Size X-Men 1. And
wait, an actual copy of GSX1?
Yes, yeah, for real. Like X-Men, he was a Claremont god. You should learn this.
Even at that time, that book was worth some money.
Yeah,
he was trusting.
That wasn't Claremont, but yeah,
it was Claremont. Claremont worked on that book.
He did, okay, and that was Lee Ween. Yeah. So he knew a great story, and aside from the colors and images jumping off the book in my young, 3-4-year-old face,
Dave Cockrum,
was also my uncle's Senka breath breathing over my shoulder as he read these things to me, and it was awful. So I kind of have mixed feelings. But then in 1983, in the neighborhood we lived in, we had a comic shop that was a block and a half away from our house, and it was run by two brothers.
Oh,
and these two brothers are exactly why my shop is the way it is. I will never own a shop and be the people that they are. And I know not only myself and him, we can be curmudgeons. But these guys, these guys just, they left a bad taste in your mouth when it came to the hobby. And we had a new shop open maybe 3/4 to a mile down the road.
Which is right on the doorstep, all things considered, of one comic shop versus another.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, it was the same neighborhood, neighboring neighborhoods at least. They were connected. And my uncle, found out that this place opened and essentially once a week made me start going on what we termed as the death marches. I would march down Gravois from Gravois Plaza. If anybody is familiar with the old south side of St. Louis, you had Gravois Plaza, Kmart Plaza, Kroger up there, Gravois and Grand. We would march from there down to, the shop was called Moe's Comics. We would go under the viaduct and back up the hill and past the Wonder Bread outlet and over here to get comics. I'm going to learn to stop hitting that. And, there were times in the beginning of that first year, he's got me marching out in like 4 inches of snow. I'm like 4 years old. Snot is freezing out of my face. But when I got there, you walked in and he kind of had this odd setup, like looking back at it now, the way the shop was. You walked in and it was almost like a sunroom. and it was just bargain back issues, 50 cents, $1.
But
And
didn't he have new books too?
oh, yeah. And then you would walk in further to the next room in the shop, and he would have his new books and his higher end back issues. And I remember, to this day, I don't remember the actual book. I can just envision the cover in my head. I think I bought this book a total of 3 times from his shop. And there's a couple, and we'll go to those. But the first one was Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen.
Really?
And it's where Superman is laid out on some power lines on the cover, and his suit, Clark Kent's suit, is kind of like burnt up, and you start to see
revealing.
the Superman. Yeah, you see the reveal underneath it. And then She-Hulk, Savage She-Hulk number 3, I think it is, where she's on the it's almost kind of, some people have made the reference, but almost like an Action 1 homage, where she's holding the car up. That one. And a Tales of Suspense with Hulk and MODOK, Jesus, on the cover, coming at each other. It was crazy. Tales to Astonish, not Tales to Suspense.
Yeah.
Of Suspense. Jeez, I'll get those words right. We'll work all this out, guys, together. So, I just, I bought books. So anyway, the story behind all this, I've gone way off in the weeds. The point was, my uncle taught me how to read from these comic books, and then created an interest around them and fed that interest. To this day, I still write in block letters, because of comic books. That's the way. But by the time I was in kindergarten, I could write in cursive because of him teaching me all of this through comic books, and then going beyond that. And I read comic books for years. I mean, I had a friend that lived in Oakville, and we would go to comic headquarters. And back when Steve was the owner, rest in peace. And I would buy back issues there. Fantasy in Maplewood that's no longer around.
Well, back then it was
sorry.
Ravensloft.
Sorry. Fantasy in Kirkwood is the shop I was actually thinking of. And Fantasy in Florissant. They're all gone now. They have shops.
Was that Fantasy Books or the Fantasy Shop?
I don't know. That all gets very murky between the two people the two names.
And Bob's Place in Kirkwood was... When did he open that?
Well, Bob's Place, isn't that what Fantasy took over? On the corner there on South Kirkwood?
No, he was, what was he, second story? Because he was upstairs?
Oh, Bob Monkey. Bob, yeah. Who's no longer with us. I remember Second Story Comics.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going deep. So, anyway, we'll stay away from some of those stories. Some of those people. So I read comics up until about 1991. It was junior high, maybe 92. It was right around the whole, just as we were talking about, the Image split, when they shook up the industry. And I didn't touch a book for nearly a decade. And then I'm having a child, and my dad says, hey, why don't you take my comic collection and sell it to help fund some things for the kid? Sure, I'll do that. Start selling some books. Book a table at the Shrewsbury show, the former Copeland House show. Like, let's just be honest. At least it wasn't on the second floor anymore. And
right.
Everybody had to pack up, and there was air conditioning in the building.
Still moving into Shrewsbury wasn't always the greatest of experiences, but it was better than Copeland.
It was better than the Copeland House. It's still not the best dealer load-in experience. True. I set up, and I'm just going to throw it out there. Like, on that day, I met 3 people. I met Steve. We'll just leave it at Steve. Certain people don't know who that is. He's no longer in my life, but it was a dear friend for a long, long time, and I miss him very much. And then I met Mark, who I think everybody could see that Spidey bike back there. That was Mark Faraci, second owner of All American Comics and second owner of Moe's Comics, and then merged them together and ran them for several years, many years, until he passed. And now our good friend Dave runs that shop, and he's doing a great job with it.
Yes, he is.
Anyway, moving on. And I met this SOB right here. Those are the 3 guys that were actually kind of friendly to me. Mark, I think, had ulterior motives to that. I told him that later. There's no shame. He would be aware of that.
He'd probably admit to it.
Yeah, he was like, "What can I get off you?"
Right.
But you and Steve were actually very friendly because you guys, I think, knew, obviously, that I was new to, the scene again. It had been 20 years probably since I've been to a comic show, 15. And a couple shows go by and I start talking to you. And you're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm a mercenary, dude. I'm selling this stuff." Like, I don't know, what do you're talking all this nerd crap to me. I don't know it. Go outside, nerd. I don't know. And then you're like, "Well, if you really haven't read a book in a while, like, maybe check out some of these." And I was like, "Okay, what?" Those books were Fables, Ex Machina,
Why the Last Man?
Why the Last Man, and The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because this was 2003, roughly at that point.
Was Walking Dead out at that point?
It came out in 2003. You told me if I didn't get on it, I was missing out on a fun story.
Well, man.
So then I started to read that stuff, and I'll be honest, the Bill Willingham stuff.
The Fable.
That's what hooked me. That is really what hooked me.
Which is funny because I never found him until Fables, and he had done a good amount of
stuff. Yeah.
Before that, his Elementals, I think, was a good seller for an indie brand, but I had never read any of it, and but Fables was just over the top.
It was phenomenal. It was taking something that you were familiar with and putting an adult twist on it.
Well, just
to bring it back.
A whole new way of looking at everything you read as a very young child.
I mean, is that maybe the second multiverse after Infinite Crisis?
Oh, gosh.
Or Crisis on Infinite Earths? I mean, we hadn't... That is kind of a...
Well, I mean...
Am I going too nerdy now and thinking that's...
that's pretty nerdy.
Yeah, I mean, but we're doing nerd stuff.
What he did was took all these stories that we were all familiar with and some that we weren't and put them all in the same place somehow. So was it even a multiverse as much as he just...
Well, no, he
crammed them all together in one universe and said they can all exist together.
But also created a deeper backstory to flesh out these characters that, it's crazy. That was the first celebrity back in the beginnings of Twitter, celebrity, I say, that I tweeted and told him, "Hey, it's because of your book."
Yeah, my turn.
It's because of your books I'm back into comics as an adult.
I love you, man.
Yeah, pretty much. And he actually took the time to respond and said that was the greatest thing he heard. So, hey. All right. So we're back and...
just had to take a little break.
We're going to edit out whatever happened before and hope that all of this is saving, I guess, at this point.
Well, we're doing our best.
Yeah, we're figuring out.
We'll see what we get after the fact.
So that was our history lesson, I guess.
A little bit. There's bound to be more later.
Oh, sure, for sure. I can't get my crap together here. Just everything's moving at once. All right, here. So, the other thing, aside from history lessons, we're always going to be trying to do and talk about, we're also going to try to touch on things that are going on here in the shop. We're going to get into more of this and figuring out everything on a weekly basis and what to talk about, what to point out. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was how much the back issue industry, I guess, I don't know, just how it's changed and how your bargain books are changing, and for us at least. So we, over the last 2 years, have on a couple of occasions purged all of our dollar books and gone through and pulled out what we felt wasn't moving. We had too much of. We did this 2 years ago, and then
gosh, has it been that long?
Yeah, and then this year we did it again. We did take off last year from this, apparently, and the titles that we've pulled out. So let's talk about all of the dead titles we have decided no longer fit in our dollar books.
There's so many.
Oh, yeah. Anything Rebirth, except for, just a couple of keys.
New 52.
New 52, except for a couple of keys.
Anything that says Superman on it.
Superman, Aquaman, Green Lantern.
Robin.
Outsiders.
Oh, man.
So then the flip to that is, some of that's great stuff, but then it's also indie books that we just know
aren't moving.
They're phenomenal reads, though.
Yeah.
Like some of them, like
it's
we
not,
talked about.
It's not a judgment upon their content. It's their ability to sell.
The demand that drives the price.
And we're not deciding that.
No.
Our customers
you guys, everybody out there is.
Yes.
And that's it. Like, Why the Last Man, Fables. We were talking about some of these titles, some of the greatest reads. I mean, at times, don't get me wrong. Fables fell off at one point, did some spin-offs, and lost my interest and got too oversaturated, and I couldn't do it. But you have Ex Machina, you have The Walking Dead, I guess, kind of the same thing. The big hype came and pushed that title up, and then nobody was interested anymore outside of the big keys. And when I say big keys, it's let's really get down to like 4 or 5 books,
Well, and even
the first Michonne, the first Governor, the first issue, that's it.
Well, and the first 20 issues is probably, if there was going to be any demand, just based on the print runs for those books and the availability. Right. And much in the same way that Invincible early issues are in absolute high demand right now, and it's because they're largely unavailable, and when we get them, they disappear.
And that is a book that doesn't seem to have been massively shoved down our throat in reprints.
Right.
Invincible, unlike The Walking Dead and Fables, all of those titles, those trade paperbacks, they're like in the 1900th printing. And it's crazy.
Well, and we can hardly afford to take another Fables trade paperback across the counter at this point.
Right.
We don't want to buy any more of them because we can't sell them.
And that's sad because they're great reads, but nobody's picking it up. So,
well, and they also, that series did very well.
Yeah.
And it was not necessarily huge print runs, but then they reprinted it and they reprinted it and they reprinted it.
People kept buying it and kept buying it and kept buying it, and they kept reprinting it, and then now here we are with an abundance of it.
Uh-huh.
And it's the same thing with the rebirth for DC, the New 52. I think in the next year or two, we're going to see that a lot with the Powers of X and the House of X.
Very well might. Well, and with the rebirth and the New 52 stuff, it's not just the single issues.
No.
We're seeing a proliferation of, again, trade paperbacks, and even the hardcovers are priced so low, because they're just not moving.
I mean,
and even on the internet, I think, are not moving very well.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the same thing happened. Marvel did the Marvel premiere hardcover issue. Like, do you guys,
Well, some of those,
they're
so
just
cool.
trade paperbacks with hardcovers. That's all they are.
Well, but they also, every one of those that they've made is a limited print run for that first premiere edition. That's part of the point of it. Is it something they've reprinted before? Almost assuredly.
Sure.
Is it something they're going to reprint again?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So does it really matter that one printing of it is limited? They're kind of
Right.
cool.
Right. That
But does
you
the-
might
the-
have some different cover art, or
Well,
like
I manage this collection here in the back room, and I don't see it helping them sell at all.
no. I mean, and the simple fact is that when it comes to Marvel, some of that you've had reprinted in Masterworks. You've had it reprinted in
Essentials.
Essentials, yes. Epic Collections. That's what
Yes.
I was trying to go to. And then you had those Premiere Collections. And
then,
well, I think the
and-
Premieres predate the Epic Collections.
They
Maybe.
do,
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. But then you also, at this point, have Omnibus.
Yeah. Then you have the Omnibuy.
And then there's just the regular old trade paperbacks and hardcovers that they've made of all of it.
Yeah.
And, and when we're talking about Silver Age, Bronze Age stuff, a lot of that was reprinted in comic book form.
Yeah.
And in some cases, more
Marvel was the king of reprinting that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
because it sold.
Collector's item classics and, the greatest comics and, all that stuff.
Well, and at the time they were doing that, there weren't really back issue stores around.
No, exactly. Those predated comic shows, back issue stores,
Well, and
all that stuff.
it was the smart thing to do because you're presenting material to a new generation that
And-
hasn't already read that stuff.
and don't have to pay the creators again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The material has already been created.
Yeah. You've paid for it once, print it as many times as you can. That's kind of the motto. Right?
Well, say it's a middle 1970s book. It's got 30 or 35 cents on it. You're charging the same price for that reprint that was already done.
Right.
It's, you have a far better profit margin on a book like that at that
Sure.
time.
So, again, another history lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was going with that was that so many of these titles, and some that were even left out, were like Countdown and 52 and all this stuff.
Well,
Legends of the Dark Knight, and
All the Green Lantern stuff.
now you're gonna touch me in the soft spot.
I know, but that stuff, it sold very well, so they
Yeah.
made lots and lots
Yeah.
and lots of copies of it. And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to retain that material in their collections, so they're offloading it unto us, and we've ended up with the same stuff over and over and over again. What's
again.
it,
Long boxes of this stuff that we cannot move or sell. So when it comes in the door now, we have kind of taken the stance during purchasing that, at one point this was a great dollar book. We could fly out the door all the time. I take it to show, back before the shop, But now it's a dust collector.
Well, and we can't get 50 cents for this stuff.
Yep.
And at the same time, there's apps and websites telling everyone that book is worth that $3 cover price that it was originally charged.
James, it's like you're reading my mind. That's exactly
Yes, sir.
where I was going.
That's where we're going with this.
So yeah, so we have all right. So even before apps, we have
books,
comic price guides. We'll just put it that way.
Whether it's a book or a magazine, an annual or a weekly, a monthly.
Oh yeah, the monthly. What's trending right now, and all these magazines, and buyer's guides that were coming out, and just all trying to associate a value to these books. And the problem was
the gentleman's agreement.
Exactly. It was almost like an unspoken gentleman's handshake that we will never value your published work below retail.
Well, it's original cover
Yeah,
price.
below retail, the original cover price. Exactly. So if you said this book was $2.99, our median price in our price guide is now going to be $3. And that's just not the reality. When backing up to the history lesson from before, when I talked about, coming into this as a dealer and learning things, the biggest thing I had to learn that a comic is only worth what somebody is willing to pay for it.
It doesn't matter what the price guide says, especially when the price guide only comes out once a year.
It depends on what the audience determines it's worth. And you have to look at real-time stuff. And a lot of... So then we flip into talking about these individuals selling these collections to us with these titles and what they have set their expectation level at and what they think it's worth based on these apps. So,
well, it's a good news, bad news situation. Good news is we will buy your comics. Bad news is
not for what you think.
It may not be that value that you've been misled to believe it's worth.
Right. So if you have Silver Age, X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four, Brave and the Bold, those early
even
issues,
Bronze Age.
Yeah, like all this stuff, Marvel Spotlight, all these first appearances, we're going to pay up for it.
Absolutely.
But if you have stuff that we are going to struggle to sell at 50 cents an issue, you're not getting 50 cents or $1 a book. It's not going to happen. And
well, especially fully knowing that most of these 50-cent books aren't going to sell for 50 cents. So when we end up wholesaling them out
at a nickel a piece,
buy the long box to somebody, they pull a truck up in front and we load them up.
And it happens. And we have to move. I have to shovel the shit out the front door sometimes to
so
get
we
it
can
out
get
here.
more in here for y'all to flip.
So we can fit something new that interests you and makes you want to take it home.
Right.
So that's all there. So, taking into consideration that we have to shovel some of that stuff straight out the front door just for somebody to take. We have to pay less for it. And I guess what I'm leading into is these collector apps that everybody is using now, today.
Yeah.
As I'm, we're old school, like we've been around for a while. Overstreet was the outdated app, essentially. For us, that book was outdated. It didn't work anymore. And, now guys are coming in and they just want to put their phone in my face and show me their list from this collector's app. 3 weeks ago, I
look at my spreadsheet.
Yeah, yes. I went out 3 weeks ago. It was the first really hot day here in the area. And I went to an under-the-house garage to look at a collection. And I looked through all the comics. It was a comic and toy collection, the way it was presented was toys and collectibles. There was a lot of 90s Toy Biz action figures, which I'm not against. There's some good stuff in there. There's some great stuff.
And there actually has been a small resurgence in price on some of that stuff. Even though
nostalgia.
There's a lot of it out there, but that Disney Plus cartoon has helped.
Yeah, that hasn't hurt for sure. But, I looked through the comics and, I couldn't get a price out of the owner. And I said, well, here's what I'm willing to pay for the comics. Well, I don't know. That's way less than I was thinking. Well, what were you thinking? So then I spent nearly 3 more hours going through the toys to get to the end and him to tell me that, well, I estimate the value to be $75,000. Dude, you might as well smack me on the head with a hammer because that's not going to work. Like, it's not 20 grand worth of retail, and I'm going to pay you fair on what you have. But what you think is fair and what I think is fair is way off. And toys aside, he even said, he was like, I don't really know with the toys, but the comics. So he was using a collector's app. And these apps, there's so many of them. Like we use them as reference points. We pay for subscriptions. It's almost the same as the old Overstreet days, just a great reference.
Figure out where the keys are in the
room. Sure. Reference. Tell me where the hot points are.
But not necessarily for pricing.
Yeah. Oh.
Well,
so your app is telling you it's $75,000, and I'm thinking it's about 15 grand. How are we going to meet in the middle? And that's the thing. He shows me that the app says that's the high end. Is your app telling you that the high end includes graded 9.8s, 9.9, 10s that might be out there,
which
for
you
some
don't
of this
have.
Crazy, weird modern stuff that might be graded? Like, you don't have that, and I can't pay based on graded prices for raw books. I can't do that. Well, how do you expect that?
Your raw 8.5 is not worth the same money as that slabbed even 9.6.
Exactly. So where are we at? And then how can we get back to reality? And so I felt like, we went through years of buying that obviously sellers have the ability to and definitely become more educated nowadays. I'm not against that. Be smart. Know what you have.
There's so much information. Honestly, I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people.
And for those people to find the correct information and filter it out, and not, so many people will come in and be like, I saw one on eBay for $1,500. Yeah, but all the sold ones have been $5. Like, there's a big spread here. Let's figure out how to rein this back. And
we had a guy call on the phone one time, and he said, I have this Superman book, and I Googled it, and it's either $5,000 or $400,000. What can you pay me for it? And when he said $400,000, I went and Googled, and sure enough, the first 2 things that popped up at the top of the page, one was $5,000, one was $400,000. What did he have? A book we can't.
$5.
No, we can't get 50 cents for it.
Sure,
because it was.
Well, I mean, that's like all through the late 90s and early 2000s. You had all these people that were getting ripped off by the what's the DC Treasuries?
Treasuries, not the big
DC,
ones.
Yeah, the Treasuries.
Marvel
Treasury.
No, you're talking about the famous first edition.
Yeah, the first edition
where they would rip the
cover
cover
off, and try to tell somebody,
that still is
this
going
an action
on.
one, this is Superman one, this is detective.
That showed up on Reddit recently because Goodwill had one of them listed on their website, and there was a bunch of people thinking they were going to get rich on it. It was a Tech 27 or an Action 1 or something
Can
like
you
that.
please put a tape measure next to that?
Right.
It looks a little large.
But hey, the Golden Age books were bigger than they are now,
Well,
right?
they weren't.
They weren't this big.
Yeah, they weren't. Stay Puft Marshmallow Mans out there in the world. So, I mean, and so I guess what I'm getting at is that we are facing a bigger challenge right now, trying to continue to buy product. And I mean, we definitely, I think, have less problems than some people do.
Maybe.
We buy a lot. We buy a lot. But
The challenge really is for people to understand that we are actually trying to be as fair as we can with them.
yeah, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we say or how we act with them. I mean, there are certain people and collectors or individuals willing to let go of this stuff are always going to hold it close to the chest
Well, there's a
and
difference.
think that like we're going to be like a pawn shop and want to rip you off. And hey, no disrespect to any pawn shops. I'm just saying that seems to be the stereotypical response I
Sure.
could say. I love pawn shops. Anyway, like, they think they're going to get screwed over, essentially.
Well, I mean, to some degree, because we are secondhand only, I do kind of think we are very much like a pawn shop, except we don't give loans.
Yeah.
We only buy.
I
and
did
we
get
only,
asked if we would give a loan last week, but
and we also only buy specific things where
Mm-hmm.
pawn shops are far more open to many things of value.
sure.
I don't want your Rolex.
Right.
I
Well, I might.
Well, I want your X-Men.
Yeah, I want your X-Men. I want your, your Fantastic Fours. I want your
Mezco 112s.
No, that too.
I want
Yeah.
your sideshows.
I want your sideshows.
Show me the Super 7.
So, yeah, at times,
Where were we going with this?
I have-
Is ultimately people and their perceptions based on modern technology
Yes.
of the value of their collection
so
and the misrepresentation that is being purported on all of them in so many different fashions. And I don't want to start naming apps or websites, but the truth is the majority of them are leading people to believe
well,
incorrect information.
so you stated you didn't want to name any apps or call any out, and I'm
Well,
not going to
I'm
either.
not-
I'm going to stay on that page.
We're not trying to throw shade.
No, not at all. But sometimes some of, if we want to put things into perspective when it comes to comic books and these collecting apps, to also look at the other collecting apps that are controlled, owned, sourced by the producer of the product
Right.
that is tracking the pricing.
There's a
So,
certain little
there's
box toys.
Little
that are
fathead,
notorious. Yeah.
little fathead bobblehead toys, certain playing cards that come out there.
oh.
That's all done by the manufacturer. Why would the manufacturer want you to think their product is worth less? And that is essentially what I'm getting at, is the same agreement is made with these other sites and apps for the publications of comic books.
Gentleman's handshake.
Exactly. And as a gentleman, I'm going to tell you, a lot of it's just fodder. It's just trash to a lot of people. There might be some great reads. There might be, some interesting art. over the last couple of decades.
There has been.
I think outside the covers, though, that is dwindled.
But the truth is, a lot of those books, who cares? Because you can go get a trade paperback off the shelf for $3.
So that's why your, $903 books are now quarter books for us, because they've been reprinted and reprinted. We kind of came the long way around to get here. But here we are.
Not everybody understands all of that within the long way around.
Sure.
I think there's a huge misconception, and to some degree, this is probably why a lot of shops just said, forget about it. We're not going to buy your back issues anymore, because they've taken so much flack.
Well,
and were they lowballing in some cases? Maybe.
Sure.
Were they making fair offers? Maybe. Did the person on the other side of the desk see it as a fair offer on enough of a regular basis to make it worth all the ish that you put up with in the process of doing it? And I could see a lot of these guys, especially the ones that are selling new comics, just saying, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Well, why, for those guys, why would I want to put in the extra work, real estate, storage, for all that? But that's all we do.
That's all we do.
And I think that was the big point of that we're making changes and we're throwing out some of these dirty with the bathwater. And now it's bargain books, and it's sad to say, like, it's great reads, it's great production, but
to put a number on it that translates this to everybody, our most recent purge of the dollar books was 76 long boxes worth of comics, and at an average of 200 and some odd comics per box. 76 long boxes was a lot of books to take out, and that's how much,
nearly 20,000 books
that we
took out of here.
Just had to go.
And we wholesaled out, we stripped out and made two for $1. We did all this stuff and to start moving them out the door, and that's what we had to do because it was dead real estate,
stale.
So then that also is going to lead us into our next point. I don't know, like, this one's going to be touchy for some people. I don't know how we're going to keep doing dollar books at this point. Like our bagged and boarded dollar books. I am just like,
well, the sheer cost of the bags and boards that we endeavor to put on every one of those dollar books. We're trying to rebag and board everything so that it's fresh.
So, and that's what
and
I'm
clean.
talking about. So
we don't like putting dirty bags out.
I've fought this for 5 years now. The cost for bags and boards between 2020 and 2022 was an increase of 30%. It is now 2025, and we're seeing increases yet again. Like, I saw them all throughout this time, and I've kept this up. And what people, it's a bag and a board, blah, blah, blah. But what about the labor and the storage and the real estate and all this stuff? Like, I've tried, and I really look around at a lot of our friendly competitors.
They don't have dollar books.
They don't have it. And if they do have dollar books, they're not freshly bagged and boarded. Right. So we're really weighing that. And we're going to really look at how, if at all, that's still possible moving forward.
Well, when the supplies company contacts us directly and says, hey,
34% increase.
Heads up, here it comes. Your next order is going to cost a third more. It's flat out.
It's a good thing I spent so much money in January.
Well, I mean, but at the rate we go through these things,
that won't make us through the rest of spring into summer at the best. No, it's a challenge. So
the rate at which we can go through a pallet of supplies is actually kind of scary.
Especially seeing as there were points that we were having a pallet every other week delivered. Like, what do we do with this? Like, this has to be made up somewhere. We can't keep, like, I'm sorry, dollar books. That whole aisle over there, people can't see it, but if you're familiar with the store, and at some point we'll cut in a tour, but over there, that's all dollar books. There's 400 roughly. Well, I don't know. We have the 2 for $1 now, but at one point it was close to 300, 400 boxes of dollar books.
Mm-hmm.
How can we maintain that at a loss?
Right.
That's not a loss leader. That's a whole store over there. We have to have to change something.
Our dollar books alone is more comics than probably any other comic shop.
Sure.
In 3 states.
Yeah.
Has in one place. There's very few that maintain that kind of back issue inventory. And it's because they don't have to. They're selling new comics every week.
We're doing something different. We have to keep the inventory for you to come dig through.
And we want it to be fresh all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to circulate. It's got to come in. It's got to go out.
And now it's going to hopefully circulate faster when we look at what you're bringing us, and it is
going to be a little more choosy.
Bargain.
Well, I mean,
bargain.
Yeah.
So come find some reading material. I don't know. I think we might have finally reached the end of this.
Well, we got to be getting close because we're probably...
I think we're coming up on an hour and a half, and I said I'd like 45 minutes to an hour. And now we are getting real deep, and we're going to cut this down and hopefully deliver something watchable.
Well, I think this first podcast is easily going to be over an hour, so hope y'all enjoy our opinions. And, I think I can speak for Eric here that after all the years we've spent doing this, the one thing we might be entitled to is some opinions.
Yeah, for sure. We're entitled some opinions.
We've earned a couple. We have been in the trenches.
Yeah. I'm still in the trenches every day. So
well, I mean this exact thing, one of the points I wanted to say is this job is a hustle. We have to work hard on it every day, 7 days a week. And I don't know if I could, or you in good conscience, necessarily recommend this gig for most people. We get a lot of calls from people looking for a job.
Yeah.
And we could talk about all the different reasons why we can't just hire anybody off the street, because there's so many things it takes to do what we do.
We don't hire no geeks off the street.
Well, we can't. The amount of knowledge that we require for somebody to do this job.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is knowledge, and we have found ways, and we're going to talk about, I think at one point we will spend some time discussing all the team members that helped us get here.
Absolutely.
They're brothers and sisters, and we love them to death, and we just want to give them a shout out. With that being said, yes,
would you
hold on. How many times has somebody come in here and be like, I just wish I could do what you guys do all the day, all the time. It looks so great.
Well,
and you have to be like, Bro,
You don't want this.
Bro, you're seeing what we put on Facebook, our little pictures, our little videos. Like, you don't know the blood, sweat, and tears and dirty that we have to get into to do this, and the stuff that we have to tolerate and put up with, and
The stank.
the stank. And geez, just the aside from the stank, just the lack of connection sometimes, talking to somebody that understands, like, oh, that's a whole nother episode. Like the guy that brings you in his toy collection that's covered in dust and mold and mildew
And dog hair.
and soot and everything else, and then gets mad when he finds out what you charged for that collection after you put all the elbow grease in to clean it and get it presentable and get it out there.
Yeah. We've only got 40 hours in working on your collection.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even count how many times we had to run it through the ozone chamber to get your smell off of
Your ozone chamber or bleach or, I got a tennis elbow now from scrubbing these bubbles, these blisters. Like, you only paid me 25%. Yeah, because you brought me Swamp Thing out of the dirty dirt. What do you want? So here we are. We hope in the coming weeks to keep delivering something. I don't even know what we delivered tonight, but I do hope that we can keep this going and I don't knock over my mic and we can have some fun with it and you guys enjoy just hearing our
opinions.
We're just old crotchety, man. It's just
we're gonna tell you about what we do
and don't do. That's it. I don't know. So thank you for being here thus far and tolerating us, and we hope to see you on the other side. Thank you.
Cheers.